Wongo, I want to get to our boy, friend of the show, Dave DeCola's tweet. Just kind of looking back on the whole
it's spectacular
here. Yeah, do you want to read it out?
I will. Dave DeCola, one of our Footy Prime supporters, always there for us. We really appreciate it. And now a prescient soothsayer. He had his crystal ball out. So this was from a few days ago. This is New Zealand's football's long play. Liked Herdman from his time with the New Zealand ladies, but couldn't afford TFC buyout clause. They cap tie his son. Then report the drone in France, knowing Bev will implicate John, forcing him to resign and continue his career on other side of the world. And I think it's playing out with Emma Humphreys heading to New Zealand. So it's coming together.
It's perfect. And Bev will be there in no time, when that ban ends, and then John will join them as well. So as much as, the rest of the world not giving a shit about DroneGate, which they don't, there's evidence right there. We're calling it here. Wellington Phoenix, prepare yourself. I love that.
For what?
Well, listen, they're successful.
Yeah.
There may be some controversy that comes along with them, perhaps. But they
haven't learned any lesson.
Flying high in no time.
Well,
they haven't learned one
Phoenix,
lesson.
They have that bird's eye view already, so should be no need for it.
Well, Phoenix rises, right? Kind of works.
From the ashes.
Yeah. There you put storms out there.
Hey, JMO.
Hey.
It's actually very
He's
exciting.
like, what the hell have I walked into?
No one knows this. No one knows, but me and JMO know this. JMO's building right now, testing their fire alarm system. So at any time in this conversation, the alarms could go off and the lights could flash. I find that very exciting. Like we're living on the edge.
I'm glad you find it excited. I find it annoying. So
wait until it happens. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, TFC, JMO. A few days have passed. You obviously haven't been up there, I'm assuming, to Kia. No. Obviously, there's no training right now. Season's over. Although, is it over? Because I know a lot of these clubs, they keep training kind of through the end of MLS, right? Are there still players up there?
No, it's over now. So, nothing's really kind of going on at the moment.
Okay. So, with John Herdman leaving, does this change anything as far as what this club is? Is it a complete rebuild, a partial rebuild? Does anything change from Jason Hernandez's standpoint, apart from finding a new head coach?
I don't know that it's a complete rebuild. I think it's certainly a retool. As I've said before, I think there's some good pieces here. It's just a matter of, bringing in some, filling some roster holes that they badly need to fill, right? I mean, and good thing for Toronto is that they're going to have a fair bit of cap space to do it. They have to go out and they have to get a proven number 9, a goal scorer who can sort of lead the line, because I think that's something that they've been missing for this season. Prince Owusu wasn't that guy. I think he was a good complementary piece, but he wasn't sort of going to be the go-to number 9 that they needed. I think the defense has to probably be reinforced a little bit, because they leaked, I think it was 61 goals, was actually worse than what they conceded last year when they were, the worst team in MLS. But, there's some, when you look at players, the caliber of Richie Larea and Federico Bernardeschi and Jonathan Osorio, Kevin Long, Debbie Flores, I think Alonso Coelho took a really sort of big step this year in his development. I think there's some good pieces there. So this idea of it all has to be torn down and start from scratch, I think is incorrect. I think they just have to sort of build on what they have. And, they kind of exited some underperforming players. And as I said, Owusu isn't coming back. Some other players on high profile contracts probably aren't going to coming back. Or if they do, then they'll be on reduced contracts. So there's work to be done. I mean, don't misunderstand me, but I don't think it's a complete rehaul as some people would, are claiming that it is.
How much cap space is it now? Obviously, it's far more than last year, given the contracts moving off and paying players that aren't even there. Are they in good shape, even with the Insigne deal?
Yeah, they're in really good shape. I mean, from what Jason Hernandez has told us, he essentially said it's double of what they had last year, and that's not taking into account that if they go with the 2 designated player for under 22 model, they're going to get an additional $2 million in general allocation money. and they haven't used a buyout yet. So if they sort of buy out one player, whether it's Sigurd Rosted or someone else, then that's going to free up even more cap space. So they're going to be in a quite comfortable position to sort of bring in some names and sort of strengthen in the way that they should. It's just a matter of, will it all get done in this sort of January window, right? Or will it carry on into the summer window?
And now you say 2 DPs, obviously Insigne and Bernardeschi,
Right.
Assuming Insigne stays there. Who knows that situation? We'll get to that maybe. But so Richie and Ozo, they are both now no longer DPs. They can, I know Jonathan Osorio for sure.
Yeah, Jonathan Osorio. Yeah, Osorio essentially reworked his deal in order for them to bring in Richie Larea, because they had to bring him in at a DP level. So he reworked his deal. So he's no longer a DP. Larea is at a point where I think that they can buy him down with a little bit of TAM money, so that he will not be, quite comfortably that he'd be, converted to a TAM player from a DP level, which without too much sort of strain on the budget or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, and like that's a big thing. I think not just because of the general allocation money, you get an extra $2 million a season. That's, quite a big incentive. But I think it shows a little bit more of a direction in which the club is going to go, that if they're going to go with that 4 under 22 player route, I think it shows that, and this is something that John actually talked about, at the year-end presser, saying that the team has to become a little bit more athletic and a little bit more durable, because, I mean, how many players did they lose to injuries last year? And so I think, going the U22 route, potentially, I think it'll give them a little bit more athleticism, get them a little bit younger, and just a little bit more durable, which is something that I think the team needs to become.
How important is it, GMO, to have a coach in there so that these moves and filling the roster spots that are available, you have the coach and you have like a designated and a clear philosophy and kind of a direction where you want to head? Like, how important is that to be established before you make these moves?
Oh, I think it's critical. I mean, I think the worst thing you can do is sort of start signing all these players and then sort of after the fact bring in a coach late in the game and saying, okay, well, this is the club, the team, the roster that you're sort of stuck with. Obviously it's going to come down to, Jason Hernandez, making the final call as the GM, but, any GM worth his salt is going to sort of consult with his coach and just have him sort of weigh in on sort of roster decisions, much like, John Herdman had some would say on, the people who had brought in, during his time there. So, yeah, I think you want to have sort of the coach involved, because he's going to be ultimately the one who's going to have to coach these players. He's the one who's going to be setting the tone. He's the one who is going to help the club identify or sort of establish its identity and playing style. And so, he has to be someone involved in this process. So I think the sooner that they can bring in a coach, just to sort of replace John, then I think the better.
I think
they made it so.
I think with TFC though, I understand what you're saying, JMO, but with the club talking about the identity, I think they've got to figure out who they are and who they want to be as an organization. And then I think they've got to find a manager that can implement their actions and what they're looking to do. And if they can find the right guy that can preach what they're singing, then I think they're going to be on the right track. I don't think they can get a manager in right now and say, okay, what's our philosophy? What's our identity? The club has to establish that. But going back to the players, I think they do need to bring in a bit more youth. I think they need some more energy and some more legs, especially in the middle of the park.
Yeah.
And if they can, I mean, with Prince leaving now, that's a hell of a lot of money that they've opened up. They can they've got some dough in the bank as well, where they can spend good money on that number 9, which they need desperately. Especially if Insigne and Bernardeschi are staying.
Jimmy, is that more important than a centre back at this point, given that they did concede 61 goals? Not to say
over the last 4 years, they've conceded 61 goals. The year before, 59. 2022, 2021, 66 goals. So I don't know what they're doing defensively and what they're doing on the training pitch, but that needs to be rectified ASAP, because they're not scoring goals. Is
that system or is that players? Or both?
It's both. It's system. It's the players being taught how to defend. Everybody collectively defending. Defending starts from the top as well. Mm-hmm. And if you don't get that right, then you're going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble, because you're going to be under the caution a lot of the time, which they are, and they're not creative enough going forward. They struggle scoring goals at times.
JMO, do you think Bernardeschi's future lies as a wing back. We see more and more now attacking players becoming wing backs, right? It's not rare in the modern game, but it was new for him last year, and actually he played very well in that position under John Herdman. Do you think that's his preferred position now, or would he much rather be a more conventional wide player?
It's an interesting question, Sharms, because I think you're quite right. I mean, it was something that John Herdman asked him to do in preseason camp last season, and credit to him, he took it with aplomb, right? Didn't complain and said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I think he played, really well in that spot. I'm still not convinced, though, it's necessarily his best position. I think you want to sort of have him more as a traditional wide player, just to have him more involved, in the build up to the attack. I mean, part of being a wing back, and as we saw, during the season, was that, he was saddled with certain defensive responsibilities. And again, I think he handled that quite well and it didn't complain, but I'm just not sure that's his strength. I mean, I think you want to have him deployed as a sort of a traditional wide player, just to get him more involved in the build-up and the attack. The problem with that, though, at the same time, is that then I think it becomes the issue of, are you trying to feed him the ball too much and trying to work through him? I think, this team needs sort of more sort of attacking options. It just can't flow simply through Insigne and Bernardeschi. Others have to sort of step up, and they have to find other ways to be creative and penetrate through opposing defenses.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think when you watch them, they're very predictable.
Yes,
very predictable, and I'd like to see a few more patterns of play, movement, more creativity in that final third. Bernardeschi, for me, he's not a wing back. I would never play him in that position. He's more explosive in and around that final third. He needs that energy. And for me, I'd rather him only running 30 yards to goal as opposed to 65, 70 yards to goal. Because by the time he gets up there, you're knackered, and then you got to make that run back. It's too much. And he's not built as a wing back. Richie Laryea is built like a wing back. He can get up and down that line all day long. Bernardeschi needs to be playing higher up the pitch for me.
Jimmy, when you said, and this is me being completely ignorant about culture, but when you said the club needed to figure out what they wanted to be, explain that to me. Who's making those decisions, or in the past, who's made the decisions, and how is it kind of rolled out? How do you make a decision on what the image of this team looks like, or the culture of this team looks like? Who does that? How is it done?
Yeah, that comes behind the scenes. I mean, that's going to be Hernandez, it'll be Keith Pelly, it'll be a number of people trying to figure out who they want to be. And you have to resonate with the fans. You have to have that identify your plan that's going to relate to the fans and show them on the pitch that this is who we are. If you look at Toronto, Toronto's fast paced, it's energetic, it's exciting city. That's what the fans are used to, that there are people that live in Toronto are used to. And for me, when you start putting that identity together, that's part of it. I'd be looking at it saying, okay, this is going to be our identity now. We want to be all action. We want to be fast paced, energetic, lively. Like, this is how we have to be as a team. So whatever manager comes in, if he's in, and look, the shelf life of manager is what, 15 months, 2 years max? And he's out. Sometimes even shorter, that's not getting the results. So you can't rely on a manager to come in with his own plan, his own identity. That manager that comes in now has to fit who TFC is. And there'll be certain projections. There might be 7 different things that they say, this is who we are. Hit 3 or 4 of them within your plan. You do whatever you got to do on the pitch, but this is who we are. And you have to hit these targets to show that this is us. You look at, Red Bull, for instance, what their identities, how they play, and every manager that comes in has to play their system. Liverpool's the same. Liverpool, this is how Liverpool plays. They play football on the deck. It's good tempo, energy. So any manager that comes in, you have to continue playing that way. And that's what Toronto FC needs. They need to find that identity of who they are. And they'll find it. They'll have a game plan behind the scenes. And then the hard part is finding that manager that can implement that.
I'm sure they do now, right? Marco Nepp is a German, right, of Bayern Munich, who's been there for was there anyway for a few weeks, months towards the end of the season there. And that's kind of his job, to establish what is missing from this club. What do they need? So you bring in the club philosophy, and then you bring in the coach to bring in the culture to support that philosophy.
Yeah,
I suppose, right?
Yeah, like he can say, this is what you need. I mean, look, he said it himself. I mean, we've all said it. They have no identity. They don't know who they are. Now, that identity has to come from people that actually live and work here in this city. that are within the club. You know, Jason's been here an awful long time. Keith Pelly knows the city. Everybody knows Toronto. It's hardworking, like I said, fast-paced, high energy. This is what the identity has to look like that the fans can relate to and be proud of this team. So, yeah, it's easy for him over in Germany to say this is what you need, but collectively in-house, the people that are here, that live here, they're the ones that got to figure out the game plan.
Yeah. Sorry, Jimo.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say to both of you, do you think that identity then, and then part of getting the fans on board and subscribing to it and making it emblematic of the city is making the roster, the first team, TFC that we see deployed, not exist in isolation, that there has to be that established link and that pathway back up from the academy and from the talent pool that's so deep in the GTA and wider if you're looking at Ontario, that it has to reflect the talent that's coming up as well. Like, I'm sure that Nep, when he's analyzing all this over the past few months, is saying, like, how come we're not seeing more of this talent in the first team?
Yeah, you're 100% right. But that identity and philosophy has got to get passed down to the academy. A lot of the time what happens is managers that come in bring their own style of play, their own philosophy. They end up talking to the academy director, and he says, this is what I'm looking for in players. And then they've got to change what they're doing. So they change constantly, the academy. And the academy should never be changing. The academy should be playing the way that Toronto FC plays. Mm-hmm. And that's what they've got to get to and where they need to be. I mean, you look at the academy now, and I mean, our men's national team, there were 9-10 players that are involved, all from the GTA, probably worth over $140 million. And not one of them has stepped foot into our academy. That blows my mind. And we haven't. I
still have a shot, Jimmy. I still have a shot then.
But the academy hasn't produced players that are worth a few million that you're going to sell on for the amount of time that they've had the academy. So that needs to get fixed as well, because that is part of those young players that are coming in, that next superstar that comes into the Toronto FC first team. That's who the fans relate to and can identify with. That's one of your local players. You've got to support them. And they have to get and do a better job than what they're doing at the moment, for me, in my opinion.
Well, I think that is to kind of simplify it, right? So Barcelona and the La Masia Academy, right, the most famous in the world, they play the same style of football as the first team does, generally speaking, right? They always have. So when those kids graduate, they're not surprised by the system, because the Barcelona way is the 4-3-3. Whatever it is, that's really simplifying it. So any coach that comes in there knows that already. That said, JMO, at the press conference, I think Keith Pelly said, how do you define a team's philosophy and culture? It's through the manager, through the coach, right? He mentioned Jim Curtin. I think actually Jason Hernandez did at Philadelphia. That's why I'm a little bit confused here. It's like, okay, we're going to establish a club philosophy, but at the same time, the new coach, he'll actually be the guy who establishes the philosophy. Right? It's a bit of a contradiction there, I found, at the press conference.
Yeah, I found that a bit sort of contradicting as well. I mean, look, I think the coach has sort of a role to play in establishing the culture and the identity of the club, but I mean, it shouldn't be all down to him. And I think, the other thing too is we have to say is that this is a club. I mean, we're talking about, club identity, and it sounds, kind of pie in the sky, but this is a club that is in desperate need of one for quite some time now. I mean, when you look at, the last couple of years, I'm not sure that they've had sort of a clear, distinct identity really since Chris Armas. I mean, under Chris Armas, and his reign was a train wreck. I'm not sort of saying it otherwise, but
I was going to say, what was that identity? The losing, take the bus home.
It was shit sandwich.
But at least you knew sort of who they were at that time, right? You knew sort of like the playing style. You understood like what they were going for. Since then, under whether it was Javier Perez, whether it was Bob Bradley, whether it was John Herdman, I mean, I wasn't sure who this team was and what they were trying to accomplish on the pitch. I mean, you mentioned the year-end presser, Sharms. I mean, I asked Keith Pelly distinctly. I said, what is this team's identity right now? And he says, well, what do you think it is? And I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, if you don't know and I don't know, then, that says it all. And I think it's been like that for far too long. So this idea of establishing a club identity and establishing, who we are as a team, I think it's been sort of left to linger unanswered for far too long. And it's something that they have to sort of, get right, going into 2025.
Dubs, is that going to scare off potential managers, coaches, or will that be the allure that is kind of like a clean slate, or the fact that you don't actually know what you're walking into? You don't know what this club philosophy is. Presumably, when they interview, they'll. But by now, I'd hope they have an idea what they want it to be, and they can talk about that with any potential new head coach. But I don't know. It really is starting from scratch in that regard.
It is, but I think the allure of TFC and then the big payday, like I think it's always going to be an attractive position. But I think there is a little bit of an unknown there. And if you're a coach and you are established in your philosophy in the way that you want to play, in what you truly espouse as a system and what you believe in, like you want to be able to impart that clearly, not only to management, but to your players. So like CF Montreal, 2 seasons ago, Olivier Renard was still head of sporting or sporting director. They hired Hernan Losada, who was in stark contrast to what their established philosophy was. And it was a fucking train wreck of a season. The players were just, couldn't get their bearings. The body language was shit. Like, you don't want to do that. So I think you have to go back to what Jimmy's saying. Yes, that the head coach is going to come in and lend a hand in terms of what players they want to recruit and what they want to establish. But it has to, I think, for me, fit under an umbrella of an established identity that already exists at a club. Otherwise, down the line, it's going to go off the rails. I think it's inevitable.
It's always hard to when a manager comes in, and there is a lot of changes. This team has not been good over the last 4 years. It's Slot got the dream job where he's took over from Klopp, one of the best teams in one of the best teams in world football, and he's just taken over. And he's probably the happiest guy alive right now in football. But in majority of the times when a manager takes over, it's during a period where the team is not successful, the team is lower than a snake's belly, and now there's a new identity that's going to be coming in. Are these players good enough? Can they play this style of play that we're looking to? So it will be a long-term play for me, because then you've got to get the players in that can play the way that you want to play, and that's 2-3 years.
J-Mo, here's a one from left field.
Okay.
Only because we know that what's happening with John Herdman. And it's now come to a little bit of a conclusion, not completely, just because we don't know the redemption arc, but was he headed in the right direction in your esteem? I'm just interested to see how he, people are like, oh, he wasn't up to it. Well, we don't know, or maybe we did know. Do you think he was heading in the right direction? You're there a lot. You'd have some insight.
It's an interesting question. The honest truth is I honestly don't know. I mean, look, the team did show some improvement this year. I think they had 3 times as many wins. They nearly doubled their point level from 2023. It was a bit more cohesive as a team. But you have to remember too where they were coming from. I mean, 2023 was a train wreck. I mean, it was the worst season in franchise history. So, the team couldn't help but improve. It couldn't.
They only had 4 wins, I think, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, they only had 4 wins, so there was really no way to go but up. I honestly don't know. I mean, I think there was enough that I think John did enough that he would have been given the benefit of the doubt, in that okay, let's give this another year, right? I mean, I think if taking the drone stuff all off the table, I don't think you would have looked at this season and said, oh my God, this team is a train wreck under John. We got to sort of change courses, right away. No, I think he did enough that, okay, let's sort of play this out and see where it goes. But were they necessarily headed in the right direction, and were good times right around the corner? I honestly don't know, Dan. I mean, I think, I don't think you could sort of look at what he did in 2023 and draw a definitive conclusion other than to say, let's just see how this goes for like another year.
I have a question, like historically. So I haven't followed TFC since they joined MLS. What was their identity at the beginning? What was it when you joined, Jimmy? And was that a consistent thread until they won the MLS Cup?
No, it was a hell of a lot different back then, Dubs, because we had to have so many Canadians that were on the pitch. It was a scramble trying to get the squad because you couldn't get the players that you wanted. it was a process. It was a building process, and it took an awful lot of time to get where, you know, TFC was to win an MLS Cup. But that's everybody playing a role and helping get a club to where it needs to be. And it was very difficult. I mean, look, we would have loved to play like Barcelona, but we couldn't. We had no chance of playing like that because we didn't have the horses. We didn't have the players to do that. Then a lot of the restrictions were lifted, where we didn't have to have so many Canadians starting and on our roster. I think we had to have 14 Canadians or 15. We were getting guys from local leagues just to make up numbers. And then eventually, when you got to Vanny took over. You saw a different style of play. You got the players that you wanted to come in, and then the team was successful. But during those first number of years, that was just all the building process steps. That's all that was.
I was criticized this week for not being a TFC fan and for having no right to talk about how fans feel because I don't spend any time around any fans ever. Quite the assumption, actually.
Yeah.
I use the word apathy. There's a fan apathy towards this team compared to the genuine anger in the past. Jamie, what are your thoughts on that? Am I completely off base here?
No, James. I don't think you're.
Really?
Yeah. I think there's, I think there is genuine apathy that sort of set into this franchise. I mean, there was a time where we were talked about TFC as sort of like the clear number 4 team in the city. Obviously behind the Leafs and the Raptors and the Jays. Ahead of the Argos. I'm not sure that's the case anymore now. I think this team it drew a lot of attention by sort of MLS standards, and there was fan engagement and there was sort of genuine hope. And that's sort of slowly deteriorating, over the last couple seasons. And it's not like it is what it once was. And I think the team is really sort of in danger of becoming, I don't know if irrelevant is the right word. That's probably going a little bit too strong, but, of losing its place and not becoming sort of as significant as it once was in this sort of sporting market. And it's a competitive sporting market, right? I mean, Toronto, it's, the country's biggest sort of city, and all eyes are on us. Sorry, Dubs, but it's. I love Montreal.
Fuck you, JMO.
I love Montreal.
But you're not wrong.
Love Montreal.
But I do think there is, there's slowly it's sort of the relevance is slowly being chipped away year by year, and it's not what it once was. And I think, they have to regain that. And I think genuine apathy, as you said, Sharms, is definitely set in with this sort of franchise.
It's amazing though. Sports are simple, right? Just win, everything changes, right? How you get there is the story, I suppose. Once you're there, try and remain there, because that's when you get the interest back. You get the relevance back. You have your culture set, your philosophy in stone. It's pretty easy, right, Jimmy? Football, just win.
That's it. Everybody wants to be a part of success. Win.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it is. It's all about winning. That's what this sport is all about. All sports, it's about winning professionally. And I think with Toronto FC, the fans, they do tend to get disgruntled because they expect success. They expect to win. And with the amount of money that they've put behind this organization, where they spend on the players, the stadium, it's one of the biggest clubs in Major League Soccer, and they're underperforming. And they're right to be disgruntled. They're not happy. And they need to get this club back on track and where it should be.
Was it Gibraltar or Luxembourg who won for the first time on the road recently, like ever, or in like 30 years? I forget who it was. It was Luxembourg or Gibraltar.
I think it was Gibraltar.
I think it was Gibraltar.
So I heard this interview. I forget where it was now, but there was a podcast devoted to how bad Gibraltar has been over the years. Now they're searching for their first road win, or first win overall for a long, long time. And these guys had, had a blog, and there's a popular podcast, got a real cult following. It was quite popular, apparently. Just focused on the ineptitude of this team. And then when they won, they all they felt lost. Like, now what's our direction now? What do we do? Right? I thought that's really funny, right? How things can kind of flip. When you better be really, really, really terrible, and get that following, then to be just meh, and have the odd good season, and generally speaking, be mired in horrible football, horrible sport. Find out where that came from.
We also
you know where you stand when you're shit like that. I mean, Gibraltar's terrible.
Exactly.
You can't polish a turd. Shit is shit.
I don't know. I would disagree with that, Jimmy.
Oh,
because I just saw how to validate James Sharman. Literally just listen to him once and agree with him, and he gets all excited. It was just like he affirmed, valued, validated, all in one podcast. Just
so
like
you can polish a turd.
You can polish a turd. Thank you.
Am I the turd? Is that what you're saying?
You are. You are the turd. But I was doing the polishing, or JMO was actually.
Yes.
Jamie, before we leave you, anything on Insigne at all? Like, you're hearing anything?
Just that they're trying to move him. Nothing sort of really imminent, but I just looking ahead, I'd be somewhat surprised if he's back at TFC. I think one way or another, the team is sort of actively trying to move on from him. So, which, not a surprise. I think just given, his status and his lack of just sort of living up to his salary, cap hit and his enormous salary. So, that's going to be something to watch in the offseason.
And JMO, what about the staff? I mean, that staff that's in there now are all brought in with John Herdman. Is there movement there now, or what's happening?
That's a really good question. So I've kind of been reaching out to TFC, sort of the media people there, and haven't really gotten much way of in terms of a message back. I guess they got their hands full kind of dealing with stuff. But, it's how it is, Jimmy, when a new coach comes in, right? Like, he wants to bring in his own people. So, and that's certainly what John did. He brought in his own assistants and down to his own sort of goalkeeping coach. A few people were retained from the old regime, but largely it was John bringing his own people. So haven't heard anything confirmation wise from TFC in terms of, the people who served under John, but I suspect whoever, the new coach comes in, that he's going to bring in his own staff. So, we'll just have to wait and find out.
Such intrigue. JMO, thanks, mate. tfcrepublic.ca. Did you extend the Black Friday deal over the weekend or not?
Yeah, we extended it till Saturday. It was only supposed to run until on the Black Friday, but we extended it till Saturday too. So it did quite well. So
What about Cyber Monday?
Maybe for next year. I'll keep
Boxing Day sales coming up pretty soon. Come on, you got Boxing Day sale.
We're actually going to have a holiday sale. So there you go.
Oh, hey, there you go. You heard it here first time. And that starts when?
I haven't decided yet. Probably right before the holidays. I'd probably say the third week of December or something like that. So I'm going to finally take
a perfect Christmas gift.
Exactly. I'm finally going to take a well-deserved vacation and take some time off. So it'll probably coincide with that.
You know what's going to happen when you go away, right?
Yeah.
I actually think you look pretty good, JMO. What are you, about 73?
Oh, geez.
Longer.
He's part of the crew. We get to throw it at him now and then.
Holy jeez, that's cold.
I'm a cold man.
He's 29. Leave him alone.
Yeah, there you go.
James coming to our Christmas drinks, by the way, on
amazing
on the 16th. And we should invite everyone, shouldn't we? We'll let you know where it's going to be, and if you want to pop over, why not? What could go wrong, eh? What are you doing, guys? You can't be saying that in there. Sorry, that's an inside joke. Some people get but anyway, sorry, go. So listen, if you're thinking of signing up to tfcrepublic.ca, don't do it right now. Wait until the holidays. There's a sale coming up.
You're costing me money now.
The worst promo.
It's a good deal,
worst
even
promo ever.
Sales. Honestly, it's what is it, like $8 a month or $50 for like? It's no brainer for me. I'm always a subscriber.
I've been in James' case for a while. You should charge more, 100%. It's definitely worth more than that.
Nah, it's at a good price point. I don't want to gouge people. So
hey, listen, JMO paid his mortgage off 11 years early. So what do we know about?
We're talking.
He's doing very well.
Right? Yeah,
he's doing very well right now. Thanks, pal. We'll chat to you soon.
No worries.
Thanks, JMO.